Now, the Senate is ready for a showdown with the presidency. This time it is over the acting chairman of the EFCC, that's the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Magu.
Magu's nomination was rejected twice by the Senate in December 2016 and March 2017 on the basis of a report of the Department of State Services, DSS, which indicted him for alleged corruption and unprofessional conduct.
He has, however, remained in office in acting capacity. Oshibajo last April had supported Femi Falana's view that Magu did not require the confirmation of the Senate, that there was no need to have presented him for confirmation in the first place. But what exactly does the Senate want?
Well, acting president must respect the constitution and laws enacted by the National Assembly as relating to the confirmation of nominees. The acting president should get a replacement for Ibrahim Magu, and the acting president must withdraw his statement that the Senate doesn't have the power to confirm nominees.
The Senate also wants the Red Chamber, the Red Chamber actually has resolved to suspend all issues relating to the confirmation of nominees from the executive until the laws of the Federation are adhered to.
I recall that at one time, a statement was issued by the same acting president that the Senate has no power to confirm outside the provision of the Constitution. So I really don't know whether now the acting president is changing his statement or his action by this letter. And I'll want this hollow chamber to discuss this matter before the issue is, before the continuation of the action on this letter. Let's discuss this particular statement by acting president and see how it relates to our constitutional powers, because the Constitution is very, very clear.
Indeed, there is need to interpret the Constitution. We have a lawyer in the studio, Inibe F. Young, to try to interpret it for us. Thank you for joining us on the show. Now, according to the Constitution of Section 171, subsection 1 to D, it says that the president has the power to appoint anyone, for example, the EFCC chairman, and then might not even need the confirmation of the Senate. So where are the lawmakers coming from now saying that? Because it seems, according to Nigerians, they are trying to hold the executive to ransom.
The starting point is that it is not necessary to have a war declared. The Senate need not hold the executive to ransom. If the Senate is aggrieved, if the Senate is displeased with the position of the president and that of the executive, the sensible, the democratic, the constitutional step to take is to approach the court to ventilate their grievances. They cannot resort to self-help, which is what the Senate is seeking to do by saying, it is either you relieve Magu of his position as the acting chairman of the EFCC, or we cease further legislative action on nominations made by the executive.
Now, this
that
section
is unwarranted.
This section 171 that the acting president Oshibajo has relied on to say that the president is only empowered to make some appointments without seeking legislative appointment. Can you clarify for us exactly what this section says?
Section 171 of the Constitution, in simple terms, refers and basically deals with presidential appointments. It's a generic provision that gives the president powers to make certain appointments, which by that section are divided into two. Appointments requiring Senate confirmation and appointments that are effective without legislative or Senate confirmation. For example, where the president is appointing ambassadors or heads of missions abroad, the Section 171 clearly requires that same can only be made subject to the approval and confirmation of the Senate. However, paragraph D of subsection 2 of Section 171 says expressly that appointments of heads of interministerial bodies do not require the approval of the Senate.
And that's
Does
the one
the
he belongs
EFCC
to.
fall under this particular category?
That is the position of Ms. Falana Isen and which the acting president had endorsed. However, this is not the end of the matter.
Okay.
I have argued, I have had cause to even say that beyond Section 171 of the Constitution, we have the Interpretation Act, Section 11, which allows the president to make appointments in acting capacity. And I had contended before now that when the president, in exercise of his powers under Section 11 of the Interpretation Act, appoints a person to act in a particular position, what that section says is that the tenure is based on the expediency, as long as the president deems it expedient that the person should continue to act. Moreover, the Senate has rejected the nomination of Magu twice. If, supposing without conceding, the Senate is correct in the argument that once Magu is rejected, he ceases to hold office by operation of law, why did they have to reconsider his renomination?
Second time.
A second time. If the argument is correct, upon the resubmission of the name of Magu to the Senate, they shouldn't have even looked at the nomination
in the first
instrument.
place.
Let's look at...
But having considered to reconsider the nomination of Magu a second time, they cannot be blowing hot and cold to now say that we had rejected you, you should have ceased to hold office. Why did you reconsider him?
Okay, let's quickly look at the provision of the section of the Act establishing the EFCC, that's Section 2(3). So what does that even say? Because it seems it confirms some sort of power on the Senate to confirm the chairman of the
Section
EFCC.
2 of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission Act, Establishment Act, undisputably makes the appointment of the chairman of the commission subject to the confirmation of the Senate. That is not in dispute. The argument, however, is this, that yes, this is what Section 2 of the EFCC Act says. If the position canvassed by the executive, the president or the acting president in this instance is correct, having regards to reference to Section 171 of the Constitution, it becomes unnecessary. It becomes odious. It is no longer open for anyone to say that Section 2 of the EFCC Act can override Section 171.
So the Constitution is...
is the ground norm. Okay. Is that what it is?
Exactly. However, I still stand by my position that even if the acting president is wrong by his reference to Section 171 of the Constitution, if in the event that the judicial interpretation saying that the position of the executive is wrong, that does not affect the legality of Magu's continued retention by virtue of Section 11 of the Interpretation Act, because the Interpretation Act is an act of general application. It is the act that reference is had to wherever or whenever there is disputes on the meaning of any provision of an act passed by the National Assembly. The National Assembly cannot disregard what the Interpretations Act says on the power of the president to appoint Magu in an acting capacity.
So, in other words, if the acting president or the executive believes that it is not within the purview of the National Assembly to actually confirm or not confirm a nominee from the executive, the question that the National Assembly is asking, why then submit a nominee's name for confirmation to the National Assembly if they are not bound to confirm?
For example, the one that triggered the controversy, the Mr. Bajabemila for National Lottery Commission.
Yes.
There has been a practice, and it is important to state that hitherto, before now, this controversy did not arise. We have always had the executive approaching the Senate to have nominations confirmed. It is the Magu's episode that has triggered this debate. So, President is in favor of the Senate to say that you have always come to us. But now that there is a substantial dispute of law, now that there is a constitutional controversy, what is the sensible thing to do? If the executive is now saying, look, that regard being hard to Section 171 of the Constitution, we didn't have to refer to you. We didn't have to come before you. What should the Senate do? The sensible thing is to invoke the judicial powers of the court under Section 6 of the Constitution. Because neither the executive nor the the legislature can interpret the law. However, when there is disagreement on what the law is, the only avenue to decide this is the court.
And in 2003, the Supreme Court actually gave some form of a similar ruling on this kind of disagreement, saying that if the constitution of the country covers any field, whatever law that covers that field is not
is inferior to the Constitution.
That's the word. It's inferior to the Constitution.
Absolutely.
So should it even be a discussion at this time?
No, it has to. It has to, in all honesty, because both sides are entitled to take position, which they have
Isn't
done.
there judicial precedence that once the Supreme Court rules on a case, you can apply it on another situation and just decide without even going to court?
While the doctrine of governing the field might not be so trite on the point, is that we have a situation where there are conflicting legislative provisions. We have a situation where the executive is saying by section 171, we don't need to come to you. And the Senate is saying, no, by section 2 of the EFCC Act, you must come to us.
So are we to conclude then that the real problem is with the Constitution that
it's not with
seems
the Constitution.
to be conflicting?
It's not with the Constitution.
Areas, yes.
But I am saying that you cannot disregard the argument of the executive.
Neither can you disregard the argument of the national.
I don't agree with the national
legislature.
Assembly.
But let's bring this back in perspective. The person of Professor Ishe Sage, the chairman of the Presidential Advisory on Corruption, says that the Senate seems to be confused and has forgotten its primary duty, which is to make laws for the benefit of Nigerians. The primary duty, primary being the underlying word here, does it mean then that there are other duties for the National Assembly apart from making laws?
In some,
which may cover, you know, this subject of debate now.
In some, there are three aspects of legislative powers under the Constitution. If you examine clearly what the law says, you have lawmaking power in the case of the National Assembly, which is covered by section 58 and 59 of the Constitution. You also have oversight powers, investigative powers, which is covered by section 88 and 89 of the Constitution. You also have confirmatory powers, which is exclusive to the Senate, not the National Assembly, because the National Assembly is defined by the Constitution, specifically section 4 of the Constitution and the combined effect of and with section 7 read together to mean the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, these powers and their ramifications and their incidence in laws differ. In the case of lawmaking power, which is basically where they have compulsive decision, the Constitution in section 58 of it clearly says the marginal node reads mode of exercising federal legislative power. It is only in respect of lawmaking powers that the National Assembly can say, if you don't agree with us, nothing can happen. In any case, if we don't make law, you can't do anything. We have the right to make law. We have the right not to make law. But when it comes to resolutions, passing of resolution, because a position they have taken has not been adhered to, it is not enforceable under our current constitutional regime.
Okay.
So it is even unnecessary, it is even funny and strange for the National Assembly Senate to say that we pass the resolution, the executive has not complied. Is the executive bound in law to comply? The answer is no.
So who is disrespecting the laws here? Because the National Assembly, the Senate specifically, has accused the executive of not respecting the law and will not carry out any further confirmations until this particular issue is resolved. Is the Senate being too extreme in its decision?
This is why I'm saying the Senate should not blow hot and cool. They should not approbate and reprobate. Okay. You cannot in one instance say that we have power to confirm. On the other instance, you say, I'm not going to confirm. If you are saying that that you have the power to confirm, why are you declining to confirm?
Okay.
Why are you saying we will not consider confirmation?
Even if the National Assembly sees a candidate not fit enough to hold such position, but that's aside. Now, the Attorney General of the Federation has come out to say that, of course, who is expected to be vast in the Constitution, has come out to say that what the acting president expressed was just his opinion.
And not backed by the Federal Executive Council.
Exactly, no. And of course, the acting president is also a lawyer. So It seems that
I
this is
beg
quite
to
confusing.
differ. I read that statement, a very troubling statement.
Members of the executive.
Attributed, no, it cannot be so. Attributed to the Attorney General of the Federation, who by Section 174 of the Constitution is the chief law officer. Ordinarily, he should have even made a statement before now. But the acting presidents haven't taken a position to say, this is what we are saying. Because this power is not vested in the Attorney General. It is a presidential power. It is the power vested in the president. So it cannot be, if the Attorney General has come out to say the executive has not taken a position, I beg to differ. Because the opinion of the acting president is the opinion of the executive. So I find it a bit embarrassing that we seem to see these discordant voices. We seem to see something that suggests that even within, a crack within the presidency.
But of course, Lai Mohammed, the information minister, has said there are mechanisms to actually resolve.
Why has the Attorney General of the Federation not gone to
sounds very political.
Yeah, absolutely vague. But come to think of it, the DSS report on Magu, at this point strong enough for the Senate to take the stance that it has in not confirming Magu?
The moment
the issue of unprofessionalism, unprofessional conduct, corruption, of course, big question mark on his integrity, and so many other
corruption within the EFCC.
Yes.
The moment the president had written to the Senate to say, okay, you are saying Marco lacks integrity, in quotes. You are saying Marco is ineligible to occupy this position. However, I have investigated the substance. I have investigated the roots of the allegation. I have found them unmeritorious. I have found them to be lacking in substance. I have found them bereft of truth. That Marco has integrity, that Marco is eligible. It becomes superfluous. It becomes funny for anybody to still make reference to the DSS. Because the appointing power
is the DSS of not giving him fair hearing.
It was not given. It was not given. So, but my worry is this. Why has the president not reacted to the action of the DG of the State Security Service? How come that we had a situation where the president of the country, the chief executive officer of the federation, the head of state, the commander-in-chief will issue an instrument appointing somebody that is within his power to appoint, and an agency under him, his subordinate, his appointee, come out to counter him, come out to controvert him, come out to challenge his opinion on the eligibility of that candidate. For God's sake, if Nigeria were a sane country, you wouldn't have that kind of episode.
So it leaves more questions than answers there. On that note, we'll have to leave it.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for the analysis.
Effiong is a lawyer discussing these issues with us this morning. Of course, you can be sure that the debate continues.
Thank you.